Okay, here we go. So just as a reminder, we are looking at different techniques and methods in Bible study that we can use that help us to get a little more information, a little more reading comprehension than we would normally do just casually reading the Bible. And there's nothing exciting about any of these methods. What you learn can be exciting, but they're just basic study methods that really just are tools in helping us learn more. So what I'm using is I have created a worksheet, and you can just use a plain piece of paper, but these worksheets, they're in the book. They're also free to print out. The links are all on my website under free resources, and this is called the chapter worksheet. And we're going to be writing in, and I've already got it written in on another sheet. We're going to make up a chapter title. We're going to pick out what we think is the key verse in the chapter. We're going to just summarize what we learned from this lesson. We're going to write down who the key people are and if there are any key words. And then the body of this is available for our summary. And then you can just overflow into the back page. So I also have step-by-step instructions on how to complete the worksheet. And the first thing I always say is to pray first. Always ask the Lord to help you understand His Word. Then it says read through the chapter twice. You will probably refer to it often as you work through the worksheet. But the most important thing is to read through the chapter twice. We already went through it once, at least once, when we did the character study on Jonah in chapter 1. So it says, chapter title, make up one. What do you think the chapter is talking about? And I usually do that when I get to the end of the chapter. Most of these I fill out at the end of the chapter. But it just tells you, key verse, what does that mean? Choose what you think might be the most important verse. Key people, who is the author? Who is he talking to? Who is he talking about? And so on and so forth. So in case you forget, if you're using the chapter worksheet and you're not sure what's supposed to go in there, just look on the checklist and it'll give you an idea of where to find the answer. So then we're going to outline or summarize the chapter. And so it says here, outline the chapter using the outlining example in the appendix. Well, I don't have that here, but you guys know how to outline. You just have points 1, 2, 3, and you can go A, B, C under it. So you would just do basic outlining, nothing formal. But I have a way that I like to do it better than just outlining. And one way we can do is to do the 5 W's and the H question that we talked about in the character study. If you don't use the 5 W's and the H on the character study, then you can use it here in the body of the chapter worksheet. Just who, what, where, when, why, and how. And that will basically cover your story in that chapter. But I like to create bullet points from what I've read. And I'm going to explain to you how I do that. And I'll add this list of questions to my under free resources on my website. So, okay. So how to come up with bullet points or themes. If you'll read through your chapter, you'll see that it automatically kind of falls into some natural bullet points. And what I came up with in the first chapter of Jonah is 4 bullet points. And the first one is God's call to Jonah. Let me go ahead and pull that out here. So the first one, God's call to Jonah. The next bullet point is Jonah's response. The next one is God's response to Jonah. And then the last one is Jonah's comrades. And so here's another way to come up with those bullet points. If you read the chapter and you just can't easily see what the main points of the chapter are, you can ask yourself a list of questions. The first question is, Is the author talking to someone? What is the message he's trying to get across? Are there any instructions? Another question, is he talking about someone? What is he saying to them? Is the author addressing a particular topic? If so, what is he saying about it? Are there things in the chapter that you can apply to your life? So if you just go through those questions, you should be able to come up with a list of bullet points or themes. And then what you do is you just write down the bullet points. God's call, Jonah's response, God's response, Jonah's comrades. And then I put God's next move. So what I did was I just wrote down God's call to Jonah. So then I went back in the chapter, I read through it, and I wrote down the pertinent details about God's call to Jonah. And that would be, I want to make sure you can see this. Let me zoom in a little. God told him to go to Nineveh to announce his judgment. Okay, that was easy enough. So then the next bullet point, Jonah's response. There we go. He went to Joppa. He found a ship to Tarshish. He paid the fare, entered the ship. He was ignoring God and going in the opposite direction. So then the next bullet point, God's response to Jonah. And then I've just filled it in. God knew where Jonah was, and he sent a great storm, and Jonah was asleep below. So then the next bullet point, Jonah's comrades. And so I just summarized in short sentence form. The captain couldn't understand why he was sleeping. They asked him to call on his God. The crewmates cast lots. They demanded to know what to do to stop the storm. And, I just summarized that and put it under Jonah's comrades. Anything that had to do with what was going on with Jonah's shipmates. And then the last point, the men prayed to Jonah's God, feared him, made sacrifices, and made vows. And then the last bullet point was God's next move. And I put it over here so it wouldn't be the only sentence on the back, or you could do that. But actually, I went ahead and did chapter 2 on the back. So I said, God sent a fish to swallow Jonah for 3 days and 3 nights. So basically, I have just summarized the whole chapter. So let's go ahead and fill in. Let me zoom out a little more. Let's go ahead and fill in the things on the top. And my title, the chapter title, I would put Jonah Runs from God. Okay, the key verse, I think the key verse is verse 10. And it says, then he told them he was running from God. And then you would just write that verse out right there. The lesson learned, I'd say the lesson learned is don't run from God. So see, after you read the chapter and you summarize it a little, it's pretty easy to figure out what goes in these blanks. The key people, that would be Jonah and God. And you could put his shipmates if you wanted, shipmates. And then the key words, I would say judgment, because that's a lot of what this is about, is God was dealing with judgment and wickedness of Nineveh. And then I put a phrase under here, running from God, running from the Lord. So I think those are the most important. Oh, running from the word. That's not right. Thank goodness this is an erasable ink pen. Running from the Lord. Sorry, I keep hitting that camera. Okay, so we've got our chapter worksheet filled out. And this could be less detailed. It could be more detailed. Just the important points, just so you get the message of chapter 1 in your brain. And this is a nice resource to have to go back and look at later. So then what I would do is turn the page over, and it's supposed to be empty on the back, but I already wrote on it. I would just turn the page over, and now we're going to look at some other things. Let me find my notes for that. So now what you might want to do is look at any other references to Jonah in the Bible. Now, sometimes your subject is going to be someone who has thousands of references in the Bible, but Jonah doesn't have very many. So what I did, I did a search. I just used Google. You can use online Bibles, or if you have Bible dictionaries or anything like that. Let me zoom in a little bit more. So I have, are there any other important references to Jonah in the Bible, and what did you learn? Well, I looked up, let me see if I can cover out that. I found 4 references, and I listed them here, and I got 2 important points from those 4 references. 1, Jonah was a prophet. So he wasn't just some random guy that God selected to go pronounce judgment on Nineveh. He was a prophet of God. So that means he was God's voice. God used him, spoke to him directly to go tell his people things. So Jonah had heard from the Lord before, and he knew what he was supposed to do. So to me, that kind of makes his running away just a little bit more serious. And then in the New Testament, Jesus spoke of Jonah and compared his life, or parts of his life, mostly the resurrection and being in the grave for 3 nights and 3 days. He compared that to Jonah's experience. So that's very, very important. And you could go and look those up and read them. Then the next thing you might want to do is look at the notes in your Bible, if your Bible has some extra notes. And what I did, I found out that Nineveh belongs to Assyria, Israel's most powerful and aggressive threat. And so that might be one reason that Jonah was hesitant, is because they were evil. They were Israel's worst enemy. And I meant to look it up, but I have heard that the things that went on in Nineveh during that time were outrageously evil and terrible. So that could be why he hesitated. It could have been fear, and he could have hated them severely. So we'll see about that in the other chapters. So the next thing that it says in my notes, and this is a good lesson, is that Jonah needed to learn that God's grace extends to the wicked. All have an opportunity to follow the God of Israel. So I think that is going to be one of the most important lessons in the whole book of Jonah. So then I'm going to recommend 2 outside sources for information to go on your chapter summary. And those are, let me pull up my notes in case I can't put it up. And I'm going to try to get my iPad in here so you can see where I'm going on the internet for this. Hang on. All right. Let's go to actually, let me close those because I want to show you how to get there. It'll be easier if you can see right from the get-go. All right, hang on. Let me move my camera. All right. This just might work. Okay. So the first one is called Executable Outlines. So I'm going to type that in here, EXE, and it's going to pull it right up because I've used it before. It's executableoutlines.com. It's a very plain and generic site that I have used for decades, and I've even gotten permission from the author to use it in lessons and all kinds of stuff. So I know already from looking, normally it would be under Bible study guides. That's where most of the books of the Bible are. But it's not there. It's tucked away somewhere else. So I'm going to search for, it's listed under Studies in the Minor Prophets. So studies in the minor prophets. Okay. And those are, scroll past the advertisements, the sponsored sites, and then click on the first one here. And then here are all the outlines on the minor prophets. And right there is Jonah. And look what we have here. A very detailed outline on Jonah. He even breaks the book of Jonah up into 4 categories for the 4 chapters, and right there, running away from God. Right there would be your good chapter title if you couldn't think of one yourself. And then he goes down and he outlines the chapter, breaks it down for you a little bit, gives a little bit of extra information, like Nineveh was the capital of Assyria, where it was located, all kinds of extra things like that. And then he even has lessons from chapter 1. So if you struggle with what to put in the body of the chapter outline, this is a wonderful resource. And so just, copy it. You don't have to use it word for word, but use it to help you get some ideas. And just, even if you didn't come up with all of these sentences on your own, the fact that you are writing them out will help you to remember them. And then one other place I want you to see is, it's Through the Bible by J. Vernon McGee, and it's ttb.org. He also does outlines, but it's mostly notes. So I'm going to go right here to resources, and then I'm going to go over here to notes and outlines. There it is. And I'm going to scroll up, and I'm going to go to Jonah. And there's 8 pages. Let me zoom back out. So there's 8 pages of his study notes on Jonah, and they are really good. And the first couple of pages talks about how a lot of people say that Jonah is just a mythical story, and he tells you about the proof that this is not a mythical story, that it is the real thing. And it's just a lot of really good information. So there's 8 pages of data and information that you can use to put on your chapter worksheet. My brain's a little tired. Bear with me a little. And one more thing I want to show you is, when you're done, or at any point, I guess, during the whole chapter of Jonah, I would go to Bible Project, /explore, oh, I should have put, I forgot to put .com, but anyway. And then go down and find the one about Jonah. We may have to search for it. Jonah. I love the Bible Project. So, I mean, look at that. Isn't that the cutest little cartoon-like thing? And what it does is, let me show you just a little bit of it.
The Book of Jonah, a subversive story about a rebellious prophet who hates God for loving his enemies. Jonah's unique among the prophets of the Old Testament because they're typically collections of God's words spoken through the prophet. But this book doesn't actually focus on...
All right, isn't that cool? I love the Bible Project. So basically, that's it. There's a list of instructions if you need it later. When you're doing a chapter summary, you can use the chapter worksheet checklist. It's on my website. It's in the book, and the book is available for free as a download. Then there are the forms, chapter worksheet forms. You can use those or just a plain piece of paper. But those are some basic instructions on how to do a summary of a chapter. And next video will be about verse mapping. I always called it verse studies, but the contemporary thing is to call it verse mapping. It's the same thing I've always done. So what we're going to do is take a verse or two and just look at some things in the dictionary and a couple of other places that are going to really open our eyes about what that verse is about. And I'm not sure that there are any good verses in chapter 1 that will be a good example of that, so I may pull some verses from somewhere else. But that is what we're going to do in the next video. And actually, the verse studies are one of my all-time favorites. I have learned so much just from verse studies. So we're just going to look at a couple verses next time. And let me know if you have any questions or if there's something I didn't explain very well. I will be glad to answer them or to help you or to send you the link to these forms if you can't find them. And I will see you on the next video. I love you, friends. Goodbye.